Hello and welcome to Take You to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. I am your host, JP John Paz. With me, of course, the former WWE World Tag Team Champion, multiple times Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champion as well. He is the Doctor of Desire himself and also one of the greatest trainers of all time, Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, how are you doing today, sir?
I still think we ought to do the Hawaiian Pine, Cat Eye Scrying, John Paz, and Dr. Tom. I still think we need to have some kind of rap going into that, man.
The Hawaiian
So,
Lion,
the
Lion,
Hawaiian Lion,
yeah,
the podcast Lion, the
yeah.
podcast Crying, or whatever it is. I don't know, man. I'm doing great. It's just, I think everybody's suffering from the same thing around the country, but everybody's doing great.
What is going on in the world of the JPWA?
Wow, we have some guys from England. We have two from England, two guys from England, two ladies from England, one from France, and the rest from all over the United States. We have like 12 people in JPWA right now, training hard, training in this summertime heat. They're staying hydrated and got to work a show for Joe Kazana Promotions this past weekend in Carnes, right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, Hardin Valley area, and doing good. Everybody's doing good.
Ibsen, the best.
I met Ibsen at Droz's memorial, so it's good to finally meet Ibsen. Ibsen, how you doing?
And Brother Brucey, he met as
Yeah,
well, was over there.
I
Yeah,
met him.
nice.
I met him for once. Yes,
Yep.
I
Yes, you
did.
did. Jason, hello, Dr. Tom. Mr. John, hope you were doing well. Jason, hope you're doing well.
Yeah, we're doing good. I'm doing great. I don't know about your side, but I'm doing great.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Can't
Been been
complain.
been some busy weeks, man. I like it when it's busy.
Charles, favorite podcast team. Thank you, Charles. Nice.
Well, that's awesome.
And of course, Barbara. Hello, Dr. Tom. Is this live? Yes, it is live.
This is it.
She always says she's late, but she's not late.
She's not late. I keep trying to reassure Barbara she's not late. If anybody's late, it's us. We're
Now,
good.
as far as hope you enjoy the gifts, Ibsen says. Oh,
Very much so. Thank you, Ibsen. Yes.
nice. All right. Nice. Now, I wanted to talk to you about, I know it's a few weeks ago, but I actually just was away. So now getting caught up. Adrian Adonis, Dark Side of the Ring. An interesting little factoid about you that you were telling me about that you actually were filmed for it, but I guess obviously they used you in other episodes, but they didn't use you for this episode in particular.
No, no. I just had one story about Adrian outside the Checker Dome, and I guess it wasn't either appropriate or they had people talking about other stuff that was a little more poignant to the episode. But
Yeah,
I thought it was great, and it I think laid out the fact that Adrian was a tough guy, even though Danny Spivey and him had a fight. Supposedly Spivey came out on the winning side of it, but from what I remember about Adrian Adonis, uh, he was always a tough guy, and he was a hell of a worker too. Before he gained all that weight, but even when he gained all that weight, he could still work. He was like Buddy Rose in that sense, I think. Both guys were slimmer at one time and could really work, but they had that ability even when they gained all that weight. Buddy could still do the one arm push ups and take bumps and was a tremendous worker. So was Adrian.
so what's the story at the Checker Dome?
Well, Chavo Guerrero Sr., Tiger Conway Jr., and myself walked out with Adrian. We were going to give him a ride back to the hotel, and we all put our bags in the trunk, and Adrian lit up a joint. Took a big hit, and there was a cop that came out of nowhere and said, "Hey, you can't do that." And Adrian just went, "I got nothing." And the cop said, "Okay," and walked away. He used his Jedi mind trick. I swear to God. And if you would have told me that, and I wouldn't have seen it, I'd call you a liar because that sounded so fantastic back then, so ridiculous. And I was amazed. It really was. He took a big hit, and as he blew it out, the cop came over and he says, "I ain't got nothing." So that's what he did.
And the cop let him go, let you guys go.
He said, "Okay," and walked away. Yeah,
Wow.
Didn't do anything. Right. Could have been because it was Adrian. Could have been because he just didn't want to mess with the guy. I don't know.
What promotion was this for?
For Larry Matuzik. You remember Larry Matuzik?
Yeah, yeah. Didn't he pass
Okay,
away a few
so
years ago? Yeah,
this is quite a few years ago. Yes,
yeah.
but anyway, this was in the mid '80s, early '80s. After he tried to promote some after Sam Westbrook retired, and I was in Memphis. He booked me, Savage, Buddy Landell, a few other people on that show.
Pretty good group of talent there.
Well, I thought so, John. Hell, at the time especially.
Was that the first time you ever met Adrian?
I want to say I met him in California, but it was in passing when he was coming back from Japan, I think. Uh, so I met him one time in L.A. and then I met him again in St. Louis.
Barb wants to know: did Adrian Adonis try to take advantage of rookies? He thought Dan Spivey was a rookie.
I never worked with Adrian, and I don't know that, but I know Spivey's a pretty tough guy, and Dan probably well, Dan obviously didn't take too kindly to Adrian trying to rough him up. So it wouldn't shock me if what they were saying on the dark side was true. Adrian would like to bully people and push his weight around, but I never had any problems. I was only around him a couple times.
Now that fight, which they do talk about, even in his new book, "Flowers for Adrian" by John O'Lell, which is a great book, just came out. Okay, he said the Dark Side of the Ring is actually helping with sales of the book, which is good. But that fight with Spivey is interesting because it looked like he was taking advantage of. Well, as the story goes, taking advantage of. Then they wrestle again. Spivey's like, I got to wrestle this guy again. Like I'm not gonna be so respectful if he takes advantage of me. And then boom, they get backstage, and well, basically in the ring, Spivey roughs him up a little bit after the match. He got a little bit violent with him, but he went backstage. Adonis went to shoot on him, and then obviously maybe a little bit of an uppercut and a punch, and
Well,
Spivey ends up
you
fighting.
really never know who you're messing with. So Danny obviously was a little salty and not going to just take that shit. So
And huge.
Adrian, yeah, Adrian found out the hard way.
It's always somebody bigger and badder, right?
Yeah, I believe there is. No matter where we go.
I don't think Adrian was necessarily in his prime there. You know what I mean? Not looking in great shape. And Spivey probably was in his prime and young, and he's huge and he's strong. So
Well, then Adrian should have known, but
right, right.
obviously he didn't. He found out, and that's the only way you find out sometimes. Just keep doing it until you don't.
Jesse the Body Ventura said that Adrian Adonis got fatter after the East West Connection broke up. Do you believe that?
Well, it's evident he did. Yeah, he got fat after the East West connection
But
broke
is
up. Of
Jesse
course.
Ventura saying it's because they weren't together anymore? Like that was the
Is that
reason?
what he's saying? Oh,
Kinda,
I thought he
yeah.
just said, "Hey, he got fat after we broke." Well, no, I think it's just one of those things. He was just eating more and probably doing a lot of other stuff. You don't want to work out and go to the gym. So,
What do you think of the East West Connection? Obviously, Jesse Ventura and Adonis in the AWA.
well, I thought both of them were two guys who had a character you could sink your teeth into, and the leather jackets and uh, Adrian being Adrian and Jesse being Jesse. I thought it was a great matchup, great clash of characters, and but at the same time, there were two of a kind.
Ibsen saying yesterday's dark side was Bam Bam Bigelow, and he was from East Jersey, Asbury Park. Yes, the Beast from the East. My hometown, by the
Well,
way.
I haven't seen Bam Bam
I haven't
Dark
seen. Yeah,
Side, but
I have it on the DVR.
yeah, it's been a busy week. But Bam Bam was another guy who was a big man who could move and had that athleticism too. So just because Adrian got fat doesn't mean he couldn't work anymore and couldn't move around because he could.
Did Adrian get mad? Or excuse me, did Adrian get Mad Dog Vishan high and open the door on the plane mid-flight?
Well, I don't know why. I don't know if Adrian got Mad Dog high or not, but I'm sure Mad Dog was something. Have to open the door on the plane in mid-flight. I mean, he could have been drinking, he could have been smoking, or taking something. I don't know, but I came across a Mad Dog just very briefly one time, and he struck me as one of those guys who was authentic, legitimately nuts. You know, there's no place else he belonged except in the wrestling business for what it was at that time. And Adrian probably, if he probably did, if not intentionally, unintentionally. So makes sense.
Corny, obviously meaning Jim Cornette, knows a lot about wrestlers. Did he talk and compare Adrian Adonis to other wrestlers to you?
No, Jimmy never did. We never talked about that. Um, Especially when I was around Cornette, we were talking about Smoky Mountain days. So,
Who would you compare Adonis? You would say probably Buddy Rose, just as far as like,
well, as far as big guys who gained a lot of weight and could still work, yeah, I think he and Buddy Rose were two pretty big guys that probably could have and should have stopped wrestling much longer before they did. Um, I think Buddy and Adrian would be a great comparison.
from Charles, do you know if Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis got along personally or had a falling out with each other? They seem like opposite personalities. I never really hear Ventura mention him.
Well, again, I wasn't around those guys when they were a team, but I could see them getting along, and I could also see them not getting along. Jesse being Jesse and Adrian being Adrian, and I didn't know either very well. Uh, but what I did know, obviously, Jesse's very opinionated and into the political things, and I don't know that Adrian was. I'm sure he was very opinionated, and maybe he wasn't into politics. Maybe he wasn't, but obviously Jesse was.
This is from Brian Benson. In the territory days, how much did wrestlers hone their gimmicks while traveling between towns?
Well, I remember a story that Lynn Denton told. Lynn Denton was a grappler, and he said he was riding with Ox Baker in a car in Kansas City, and they were coming back from the town, and Ox just broke out into a promo saying, "You know, when they talk about great wrestlers, they don't call you a great wrestler; they call you the grappler. Beat me if you can." And he was giving that to Lynn to use on the next promo, and he did, and that became his tagline. You know, beat me if you can. And back then, I think everybody was honing their characters because no matter where we stopped, no matter what we did, if somebody knew us, we were that persona. I don't want to say character, but we were who we were. And in Alabama, that happened more often than around the Gulf Coast of Florida. It was that kind of vibe. Everybody was watching the TV, and you could go places. And like on the beach, they would got used to seeing the guys. You know, the boys would go to the beach. We would kayfabe, but yeah, I think we're honing the character the whole time. But that's what you did back then too.
Seemed like that was, think to pass the time. There's no phones, there's no internet. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like, definitely think to pass time and probably get better at honing your character and your gimmick those days
right.
than today.
Because it wasn't really necessarily looking at it as honing. It was just that's what you were doing every day, and if you were playing the part, you played the part.
In Jesse's shoot interview, he said that he loved tagging with Adrian
Well,
Adonis.
there you have it then. So he did like Adrian. And that makes sense. I mean, I could see both those guys because they were big guys that were having success and they understood the dichotomy of having uh, one be this and the other be that. So it was a great mixture of two two styles, very different, but great heels. You got to admit, Jesse and Adonis were both great heels, and you put them together, it would accentuate both, I think.
He kind of reminds me of Mike Shaw. Interesting.
Are we talking about the monk, Mike Shaw?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, Friar. What was his name?
Friar Ferguson.
Is that Friar Ferguson, Mike Shaw? And what was his other name in Stampede?
Maja Singh. What's that?
Yeah, I never understood that gimmick. So I don't know. If you're saying he is in Adrian, I don't know that Adrian reminds me of Mike Shaw, but
Bastion Booker as well.
Bastion Booger is who I was thinking of.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
not Friar Ferguson. Bastion Booker. Yeah, yeah. Yep.
yeah, okay, Bastion
Well,
Booger.
actually, Bastion Booker.
He was the
He
monk
technically
before,
was Fire Ferguson as well. Yeah. Yep.
but didn't they just call him the monk for a minute?
Probably for a little bit. I don't remember
Okay,
exactly.
I don't
Um,
either. It was that memorable.
but I know it was Friar Ferguson, then Maha Singh,
And back
Bastion
then,
Booger, which was a
if you,
funny gimmick.
yeah, if you think about it, they could do stuff like that and get away with it. Having him eating raw chicken or just having him being a
Yep.
complete slob.
Yep.
These days, I think people would get offended and cancel all that stuff.
He can't fat shame nowadays.
No, you can't. No, I'm not that I would.
What wrestler can you compare Adrian to now?
What's the guy in NXT? Quincy. There's a guy in NXT who kind of reminded me of Adrian, bigger guy, kind of same kind of gimmick, I
Yeah,
think.
feminine stuff. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the one I think comes closest for me.
Roddy Piper told a story where Adrian told him to buy a house and have a family and settle down.
Well, then if Piper liked and Piper and Adrian were good friends too. So if Piper was listening to Adrian, then I don't think he was so bad. His wife said he was a great husband, great father.
Yeah, that's so
So
interesting. Like the Matt Bourne stuff, they're saying, oh, he's not that great of a husband and stuff. But then on the flip side, with Adrian Adonis, they're saying he was like the best husband, the best father.
right. So I think it just
He could
goes
turn it on and
to
off.
sure, sure, and some guys could, some guys couldn't. So I'm glad Adrian could. And if Adrian told Piper to buy a house and settle down, and Piper did it, then there's another good deed going.
Bastion Booger from Vanderstar. Yes,
Yes.
Bastion Booger. Nick says, hi, folks. Hello, Nick. Phil. Hello, Phil. How are you? Hope all's well. With one thinks on Adrian, what sticks out in the business? His promos, his matches?
Well, I thought he did great promos. He was believable, but he did have some really good matches. Matches with Chavo Guerrero in Los Angeles, and gosh, I guess with Piper at WrestleMania, didn't he? Or Bruce Beefcake? I'm sorry, not Piper.
No, it was Piper WrestleMania
Was
3.
okay, and then Piper, but would Beefcake come down and help cut the hair, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so it was Piper. So and when I'm talking about a good match, I'm talking about just the entertainment value where you or I, let me say me, I'll speak for me, enjoyed the match because of the people involved and the storytelling, and I think Adrian was always great at that.
Magazine Retriever says, I think the reason Bam Bam isn't in the WWE Hall of Fame is because he trashed Triple H for carrying the Click members' bags. Bam Bam was outspoken about the Click. Yes, he hated the Click, no doubt about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's the reason, but it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Charles also was mentioning Bastion Booger. And then Craig, hello, Craig, said Muckin Singh. He was a born again Pakistani. There were a lot of Pakistanis in Western Canada.
Okay, well, then that makes sense. I didn't know the story there, but that makes sense. If he's a born again Pakistani, I don't know how that works, but I'm glad it did.
I
I'm
love
glad
that
he got to
gimmick,
do
though.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Good night, Irene. I wonder if he's quoting the great Michael Chavello. Good night, Irene, after somebody gets knocked out in
I
MMA.
thought that's what Adrian called his sleeper hold, or
Oh,
was it?
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes. That was
sure,
his finisher was Good night, Irene.
of course. Tim
Uh,
Murdoch.
yes. Barbara saying Adrian team with Chick Murdoch, WWF. Do you think those two got along and traveled together? Obviously, the
I
north-south connection. Instead of
I can
east-west, now
I can
north-south.
certainly see Murdoch and Adrian drinking beer and going down the road laughing and joking. Yes, I can. I sure can. Two big guys having a blast.
So the AWA Tag Team Champions with the Torah as the East-West connection, and then WWF Tag Team Champions has a North-South connection with Murdoch. So you gotta
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. I bet they had a good time. I mean, it's all what you make it, and it's better if you like your partner and um, enjoy going to work each night. It really is.
Dell, great info here from Dell Mountain. He says the Friar Ferguson gimmick was actually changed to Bastion Booger because Vince McMahon got complaints from a Catholic organization. Interesting.
Well, I could understand back then, especially. But can you imagine it flying now? Not a chance.
No, nope.
No. Dell, I think you got something on your chin.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
looked like a little Chucky doll with an injury. Actually, that's what it looked like.
that's what I thought.
Bret Hart, of course, said that Adrian Adonis would fit in any era of wrestling. Don't know if you agree. Do you agree?
I agree because it goes back to storytelling, and Adrian would know how to tell a story for today or any era. I think the greats like that knew how to figure it out, and uh, guys like Adrian Adonis, I think knew how to adapt. I would believe so.
Do you have any idea why Vince decided to do the androgynous and like the effeminate gimmick, the adorable Adrian Adonis? Do you have any idea why he decided to go with that gimmick? Because he's like a legit
May,
tough guy. He's a biker from New York. Like, why that gimmick?
Maybe to just go the opposite direction and maybe give people something to think about. And because he was this tough biker and this tough guy, now all of a sudden he's becoming this other part. You know, if you remember in The Sopranos, I forget the guy's name, but all of a sudden he shows up at a leather bar. And
Vito. Yeah,
okay, yeah,
yeah.
maybe that was long before The Sopranos came out, but I don't. Who knows why? It could have been Adrian's idea, hell, but that's the explanation I would give. Is because you want to just do the opposite, see if you can creatively make this work, and he did.
Crazy gimmick, and it's funny on one of the episodes, Vince. I think it's TNT Wrestling, it might be his flower shop where he's being interviewed. Vince asks him if he's gay. He goes, "Yeah, I'm gay." It's like, wow, I don't remember that at all. And I don't know if they were trying to really push that at all, and I don't remember them ever mentioning that again. But he actually says it on TV once.
I don't remember that either. So, but I guess it just got him more heat. Nowadays, he'd be a babyface.
Yep,
So
the crowd did not like him back then. Different
no,
times for sure.
different times.
I mean,
Yes,
obviously, he was a heel. He was cheating. He was bad mouthing the baby faces too. So it's not just the fact that he was playing like a gay character. It was also the fact that he was cheating, and Jimmy Hart
right.
was his manager. So I mean, there's many reasons of why he was being booed and hated for sure.
Yes, yes, and I can see why.
And I know he did have a bunch of matches with Hogan, but he didn't have the feud with Hogan. Now I don't know if it had to do with the Spivey situation or not, but as far as Hogan and Adonis, they didn't really get a big feud. Do you think they could have made money?
I think if Hogan was behind it and wanted to work with Adrian, it could have made money. But who knows the reasons why it never happened or really had a great angle going on. To put somebody in there with Hogan that can work, that makes sense. And putting Adrian in there makes sense. But as far as why it didn't go farther, um, no telling. There's a lot of elements we don't know. So
According to people close to him, they were saying it's because of the Spivey fight, and they thought he was like, not they lost the fight or anything, that he was like a little out of control almost at that point.
right, and that could have had a lot to do with it, you know. So if you look, Spivey was wearing yellow boots and yellow trunks.
Hmm.
You know, Hogan's wearing yellow boots and yellow trunks. So uh, I don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know went on in decision making.
From Jason, do you think the adorable Adrian gimmick was a nod to Gorgeous George?
Any gimmick like that's a nod to Gorgeous George. I think anybody who does that, from Adrian Street to Ricky Starr to, well, Ricky Starr, old school guy, old time guy. I know nobody will know I'm listening to this because anyway, but Ricky did the ballerina stuff and the implications were there, and Gorgeous George did the toss the orchids to the crowd stuff and the Georgie pins and stuff like that. So anybody who came after that's going to should would be compared to and would be given a nod to Gorgeous George, I think.
From Jason, Adrian Adonis and Tully Blanchard were actually tag team in Southwest Championship Wrestling in the early 80s. That's an awesome heel team right there.
And he was, yeah, he was a lot different then too. Young and big and bad, and I'm sure Tully liked having him as a partner at ringside.
From Ibsen, Mike Shaw said in his shoot he was on TV as Fryer once, and Vince said, I'll pay 2 months and you'll be on TV as something else. Mike said he actually did pay him for the 2 months that he wasn't used on TV. Interesting.
Well, I
I don't know
mean,
where they were going with that gimmick, but yeah.
well, I don't know if they knew where they were going with the gimmick too. I heard he had gone to somebody and said, "Hey, he didn't like the way he was being used. What does he have to do?" And he was suggested to go to Vince and tell him. And I think he went to Vince and told him he didn't like the way he was being used. And Vince says, "I'm sorry to hear that. When you want to finish up?" So,
Whoa.
but that's second, third hand information. So
As far as Brother Brucey, did he create these gimmicks? Because, he's got a
well,
somewhat of
how
an
the hell would I
education.
know if he created these gimmicks? Shit, I don't know. He
Sitting
might
around
have.
at the dinner table, he's not telling you, like, hey, I
No,
created
we're
this.
not. Trust me. Trust me. The last thing we talk about when we're together is wrestling. That is the last on the list, and usually we don't make it past number 2 on the list. So, yeah,
Well,
we don't.
as the
I
story
learned.
goes,
No, no,
who
no.
knows with
Just
some of
for
that stuff.
anybody listening out there right
Hmm.
now, the last thing in the world that we want to talk about at this time is when we're together because he's so busy with it, and then I'm doing the training school. The last thing we want to talk about is wrestling, especially WWE. If you know, and I'm sure you know how those guys are consumed. So when they get a
24/7,
break,
yeah.
when they want to get a break, and even if it's having dinner, because it draws his deal. Seriously. Um, anyway, we went to eat beforehand, and I couldn't even tell you what the conversation was, but it sure as hell wasn't about what's going on at the office. so whoever created these gimmicks is what I'm trying to say, John. Whoever created these wonderful gimmicks like Friar Ferguson or Bastion Booger certainly had some time on their hands, and they were definitely discussing this stuff over dinner. But when it came to me, no, they didn't care about my opinion.
Do you think the episode was well done or missing crucial pieces of the story? It seems like they've been a little lighter hearted lately.
Well, it is the dark side of the ring, and I think that they've probably come to the realization that yes, there's going to be some darkness in there, but why not if there's some light, shine some light on it, like we were talking about his wife saying what a great father and husband he was. If that's lighter hearted, I'm all for it. If there's some good stuff in a story, I'm all for it. So I thought the episode was done pretty well. I had never heard the part about somebody coming and robbing them after the wreck. I didn't. That's the first time I'd ever heard that
Right.
there were some guys behind them that came in and robbed them. So I honest to God don't know, but that was, I guess, Pat Kelly's
Hmm.
story.
Yep.
Yeah. So
But he also said they weren't drinking, and then the report was that they were drinking. So,
well, now it's been a few years, and he might have forgot. So we weren't there. We don't
yep,
know. I mean,
who
I
knows?
wasn't there. Maybe.
Did Adrian steal the gimmick from Exotic? Adrian Street. Also, would that gimmick fly today?
I don't know that the gimmick would fly today, and I don't know that he got it from exotic Adrian Street, but it's possible. I mean, it's certainly possible. He got it from everybody. We go back to Gorgeous George, I think, wherever Adrian got his gimmick from. I'm sure somebody stole. Well, I do know for a fact that people have stole Adrian's gimmick too. I've talked to kids who've done exotic Adrian Street or stole bits and pieces, but that's what everybody does. I mean, larceny is committed every day in wrestling. Somebody's stealing something from somebody.
Vanderstar is saying Dalton Castle, who kind of does a similar gimmick.
Possible. Yeah, that's cool. That's possible. I was thinking body type, but that's
Oh,
possible.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one. I can't believe I forgot this from Bastion Booger. He was Norman the Lunatic in WCW. Great
Norman,
gimmick.
that's right, with the
That
teddy
was his
bear
best
and the
gimmick. Yeah, that was his best
yeah.
gimmick.
Well, that's how memorable it was. Or memorable. Is it rememberable even a word?
No, it's
It is now.
memorable.
Yeah,
Yes.
rememberable.
Do you think having an episode of quote unquote Dark Side made on an individual diminishes their chances of making the WWE Hall of Fame with their name being, tarnished?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with it. Um, I really don't. I think it's just, you know, wrestling was so much different. Uh, Years ago, and the era that most of the Dark Side of the Ring guys grew up in um, was different than what it is today. It's like everything changes, and I don't know that I don't know that you can go back and chastise or crucify somebody for something that happened 40 years ago. People do it all the time, but you're a different person than you were 40 years ago. If you want to talk about
Right. Yep.
what what you've turned into and what you've done. So I think it's the last part of your life or whatever you do in your life. Um, Show me one person who's never made a mistake. Show me one person who's never screwed up, and you'll be. I'll show you nobody. I'll show you nothing. And so, I mean, I don't think it diminishes anybody at all. Let me just say it like that. I really don't think it diminishes anybody's chances of doing anything. It's just who for the Hall of Fame, who wants you to be in there, who's voting for you, who's pushing for you. I mean, that's what the Hall of Fame is. I think in any sport, you got sports that you have statistics that count. But in wrestling, let's look at it for what it is. How great of a draw you were. Well, if that's the case, I don't know who's not in there, but there's some great people. Ivan Koloff. Let's just say Ivan Koloff, the man who beat Bruno Sammartino. Why is Ivan Koloff not in the Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame?
Some issue with Vince, I think. I forget. But yeah. I don't know if he's
You're
part of the
right
lawsuit or
because
not, but I know there was a long-standing issue with Vince.
right. So if that was to diminish it, then there's going to be a diminishing thing. But I don't think the dark side has a specific thing to do with it. The dark side of the ring episodes.
How do you think Adrian Adonis' gimmick would have played at the Sportatorium in 1988? Riot causing? Question mark. B40, B40.
Well, 88. That's Yeah, that's after the Von Erichs, right?
Or they're about to head
Or
out. Yeah, they're winding
about to
down
head
there. Yeah,
out. Yeah, so
yeah,
that was after the wave. I don't know
yep.
how. Yeah, Texas would have been a weird crowd. I don't know. I think he would have got over big, but they're a weird crowd, and they like their heels and they like their baby faces. They love to boo the heels and love to cheer the baby faces. So
Tony Atlas last month online said that Adrian Adonis was the most disgusting person he knew. He never showered. Any truth to this?
I don't know. I was only around Adrian a couple times, so
And he
I
didn't
don't
shower
know.
when you were around him, huh?
Well, I didn't check, and I couldn't smell him. I didn't do the smell test, so I didn't ask him. Hey, Adrian, did you shower today, or did you shower after your match? So, and that's been about 35 years ago. So,
Brian says in the 80s and early 90s, wrestling was on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Children watched, families went to the arenas. Wrestling ignores that audience now. How is it profitable without them?
it's a different time and era. Kids have video games. Kids are busy, busy, busy. Everybody's busy, busy, busy. You have cable, you have streaming, you have all these digital uh, outlets, TikTok, Instagram, all this stuff. And to sit at a TV on Saturday and Sunday mornings or Saturday and Sunday afternoons when you have all this activity taking place, um, it's kind of hard to get people interested. That's why it's so important to have guys that know how to talk and cut promos, know how to tell a story in the ring, um, know how to look like stars, know how to be stars. And it's profitable these days because the major company or companies, let me say it like that, WWE and AEW at least will give you guys with professional looking gear for the most part. And I know WWE definitely has professional looking gear, guys who look like stars for the most part, and AEW tries to do the same thing. The production is incredible. Um, so I think that's how it's profitable. They're selling it not as a wrestling show, but as an event, as a spectacle, and it should be sold like that. To me, I looking back on it, I do this occasionally. I try to remember what got me into wrestling. Well, it wasn't necessarily a great headlock or a hammerlock. It was the gimmicks. It was the characters. It was the personas. It was the atmosphere, the vibe. When you would walk into the Sam Houston Coliseum, it was a big arena, and people could still smoke back then in the '70s, and you'd have cigarette smoke in the ring lights, and they shut the house lights off, and the lights would be on the ring. That was your full attention, and they had four sides to work in front of the guys. They had in Houston, they had two hard cameras just side by side. There were no handhelds back then. It was just two cameras. So the guys were working the crowd, and sometimes they would work the hard cameras, but for the most part, they were working as a house show. And it was a different mentality. It was a different presentation. It was presented as these guys are really having a contest, even though everybody knew they weren't. Some people still wanted to believe. These days, Vince and everybody has said, well, it is what it is, and we're cooperating and we're working together, and the outcomes are all predetermined. Not that there's anything wrong with that because they're still drawing some WWE is drawing some great houses. Um, I don't know how AEW does. I've seen some of their TV shows where it looks like they're having good houses, but
Hmm.
it's it, they have something for everybody. And I've heard people talk about Orange Cassidy and sing his praises. I've heard people talk about Hook and sing his praises. I love the Gun Kids, Billy Gunn's two kids. I think they're great, and you know, they're not selling you got your hardcore and John Moxley. So that's for that group who wants blood and guts. John Moxley's going to give you blood and guts in those kind of matches, and the thumbtacks and the bed of nails and all this other stuff. WWE is going to give you more of the sizzle, and it's going to be more like you are paying to see bona fide stars that come to your town. So when you come to your town, the radio plugs it, TV plugs it, social media plugs it, Facebook plugs it, and you get all these notifications. So they make it a big deal. That's how they get profitable, because WWE and AEW believe they're a big deal and they sell it as such. How many tickets do they have sold to Wembley Stadium now, AEW?
Somewhere between 65 and 70,000, I saw.
So
So
that's not bad.
no,
That's
it's
pretty
amazing.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty good. So they're going to be profitable there, and people are going to see that crew as stars. And I have to believe there's enough veterans there who don't want to squander this opportunity to be seen as a star. So that's the mentality you have to have. You're trying to get, it's the young people that spend the money, and it's the young people who get the parents to spend the money to take them. So they're not stupid people. They're on top for a reason, and they made all this money for a reason, because they understand business and they understand what people are looking for.
From Chris, why did Dan Spivey get fired for the fight with Adrian? Really? Spivey was so talented, seemed over the top to fire him at that point.
Well, once again, we really don't know what was going on. Could have been because Adrian had seniority. Could have been because Spivey did something else. It could have been just because, yeah, Spivey's spot on the card wasn't as important as Adrian at that time. I mean, I know that's all speculation on my part, but I don't really know.
Phil, Adrian held the undisputed world championship in Southwest Championship Wrestling. Luthez presented him with the belt after the tournament. Wow.
They actually had that tournament in Houston, and it bombed horribly.
Wow.
And
Why?
why?
Yeah.
Because they were trying to say this is a real world champion. They only had 8 guys from the San Antonio territory. Paul had been working now with Mid South, so they weren't working with Paul Bosch. They came in as an opposition promotion, and where Paul Bosch had the Sam Houston Coliseum sewn up for all those years, Southwest Championship Wrestling ran in the Astro Arena, right next to the Astrodome. People were used to going to the Coliseum for their wrestling. So they put commercials on. And they put commercials on during Houston wrestling too. And I don't know if they had half a house there or just the floor was full, but it wasn't very good. And I think Terry Funk wound up with that belt or something, but they wound up with Terry's belt. However it went. Terry had a replica belt made of the NWA title, and I think that was what they used. And it didn't get over because people knew that it wasn't really the world champion. It was just the guys from the territory, and they had no juice. They had no juice.
The Adrian Adonis from Scorch. The Adrian Adonis gimmick is similar to the Goldust gimmick in the sense that many people wouldn't think it would get over the way it did.
I'll give you that. I'll say that could be true because of the extremities that both Dustin had to go to and Adrian had to go to. They both went to extremes, and it got over a lot better than I think a lot of people thought it would.
In January of '86, in a segment on Piper's Pit, Adrian gifted the black leather jacket to Piper, which Piper used afterwards. Something many don't know. Interesting.
I had no idea. So
There is a great story here, just a little sidebar about Hogan. Not story, but a question, but I'll save it towards the end because it's a good one. Nothing to do with Adrian Adonis, but
okay.
The size of Adrian. How would Dr. Tom train him? Push up, sit up, squats. Interesting.
No, in ring stuff. Push up, sit up, squats is on him. We do in ring stuff to get you in shape. The only way to get in ring shape is to be in the ring, and that's doing drills in the ring for wrestling. My opinion. Just my flavor of ice cream.
Has anyone
Ha!
try to steal Zip's gimmick, and would you give them your blessing if
I
they
would
did?
give them all my blessing and I would tell them they're out of their freaking mind. Why would you want to steal Zip's gimmick? That's ridiculous.
ATF Media. Do you think Ronnie Hands of Stone Garvin could have knocked the flames off of Bam Bam Bigelow's head?
Well, from what I know about Ronnie Garvin, I think he could knock the flames off anybody's head. So yeah, I think he could. He'd probably give Bam Bam a hell of a match. I don't know if he'd knock the flames off his head, but I know he and Bam would have a good match.
Interesting with the tattoos on his head. I have a friend that used to be a sales manager for a place that did the permanent tattoos instead of you when you're going bald, like that kind of tattoos. LeBron
Uh,
James, interestingly enough, I was wondering. I was like, I thought he was bald, and all of a sudden doesn't look bald. It's a hair tattoo. Didn't realize
it's
that.
a hair tattoo because I heard someone. Kevin Hart. I watched Kevin Hart's
Special.
special. Yeah, when was it? Sometime whenever I got home last week, and he was talking about LeBron James was wearing a wig or what got the hair transplant, but it's a hair tattoo, huh?
That's what I was told. Yes, interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Not like Bam Bam, though. I mean, obviously, we're talking about different head tattoos here for sure.
I think it was
Magazine
great.
says, in addition to Dark Side of the Ring, I also like to watch A&E's biography of various pro wrestlers. Do you watch A&E's biography?
I'm trying to think of the last one I saw. It might have been Kane. So yeah, I've watched it. I've watched a couple of them, but I don't. Um, the last one I saw was Kane.
Chris, nobody forgives and forgets like the McMahon family. It's all about timing and location and who's being talked about at the moment, I think.
Sure, it is, but I think that's like that anywhere, any business, any company. If you have somebody that been around for a long time, and all of a sudden you leave, sometimes distance makes the heart grow fonder, and and people come and go all the time. So if you can forgive and forget, great.
Vander is saying Ivan was scheduled to go into WWE Hall of Fame until he joined that concussion lawsuit. I believe it.
I'd heard that. I'd heard that for a long time, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. If they're gonna, I mean, there's and he's not the only one. There's other people I think who should be in there. Bill Eadie should definitely be in there. Demolition should be in there. Um, why
For
not?
sure.
But they joined the concussion lawsuit. So, and WWE is the ones who picks and chooses and have people suggest names, things like that.
In Stampede Wrestling, Biff Willington beat the undercard guys. He lost to the top guys. How important is it like that to have? How important is it to have a guy like that in the promotion?
Well, it was important more so back then, but these days, I'm not so sure because you don't really have a territory. You have places where guys go and work, wrestle, and it's just a match. It doesn't lead to anything else. And then you have other places where it does lead to something else. To learn how to do that, you have to have guys to learn how to be be that guy like Biff Wellington. You have to have guys who understand the role, and that it's not easy to explain when you're not wrestling every week or every 2 weeks in the same place. It's a territory thing, and it was important to a promotion like that. But these days, there's no real consistent promotions where I think that would work.
The Dan Spivey beating of Adrian Adonis sounds very similar to the Brian Pillman beating of Brick Bronski. There was a lot of facial damage in both incidents.
Probably so. Two big boys. Probably so.
Speaking of Ricky Starr, that's who I was named after, along with Gene Stanley. That's from Rick Brooks. Interesting.
Well, would it be Ricky Stanley or Gene Starr?
Good point. Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess it's I guess it's Rick Stanley. I'm guessing there.
Right.
Charles has a good point here. It's a shame there's no more Saturday morning superstars. I miss the squash matches and the hype videos and the over the top pay per view ads. Seems like there's still a place for it today.
There's a place for it for people like you and me, Charles. But I think we're in such a minority that they're trying to appeal to a wider audience, and then people want to see bigger, badder, faster, and more colors and more lights and more glitz and more sizzle, and rightfully so. I mean, if I go to pay to see a concert, for instance, if I pay to see Aerosmith's last run, I want to see Aerosmith's last run. And if I don't care if it's show number 23 or show number one, I want to see him give the same energy. And I want to see these guys come out and be superstars on stage. I want to see them become larger than life. And, the squash matches served the point, served a purpose. But these days, you can't do that because um, you have to have more of a spectacle, and it has to be uh, that star on stage that you can't be, you wouldn't be, and they're a different kind of human being. If you don't want to do that, then don't be a wrestler, don't be a rock star.
From Dell, I like the classic match where Dan Spivey beats up an enhancement talent who refused to sell for him after roughing him up in the ring. Spivey punched him in the locker room as well, WCW
Well,
style. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's a way of teaching somebody a lesson, and it doesn't happen enough these days. I think there's guys in there who shouldn't be in there, and sometimes they need to be told, and that's one way of telling you don't need to be in there.
That was bad. And that guy was such a dope. I don't know what the hell he was doing when
Right,
Spivey beat the shit. It's like the guy was absolutely clueless.
right, and that's what he was telling him when he was beating the shit out of him because instead of saying, "Hey, buddy, loosen up," or "Hey, buddy, you're an idiot," no, I'm going to knock you out, and that's what they're telling.
Yeah,
That
wrong,
should have
wrong
that
guy to
should have
know
told
something.
him you don't belong here. Yeah.
Do you think it's odd that Marty Jannetty is doing a promotional tour for a documentary on his downfall? That must be a first. So he's
Marty's
got the Dark
doing.
Side of the Ring, and he's doing a little promotional tour about Dark Side of the Ring, which
Where
is
is
going to
he
be about
doing?
him getting fired. I think just like I think he's just doing a couple shows and stuff. I think a
Oh,
couple signings and a couple
so he's not doing it for
interviews and
Dark
stuff.
Side.
No, 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 just on his own, like to almost like promote it on its own.
Okay.
Strange.
Oh,
Get his name back out there, I
I
guess.
don't know that it's odd because it's Marty, and I mean that in a good way because it's Marty.
Where was the next question I saw here? Oh, it's from Barbara here. How is the Midnight Express in the whole? How is the Midnight Express not in the Hall of Fame? The Rock and Roll
Right.
Express is. How is this pairing? How is this
Paving.
not paving the way for them? Sorry.
Well, once again, we don't know the particulars, but if Kevin Dunn and Jim Cornette don't get along, then uh, Kevin has a lot of say over the Hall of Fame, and he may not see it. In fact, I don't think he does. But I agree 100%. It's a crime that the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette are not in the Hall of Fame. I totally agree.
And just to throw this one in there, the biggest miscarriage of justice is that Dr. Tom is not in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'll tell you, Barbara, I don't know that I had a Hall of Fame career, but I'm just happy as hell where I'm at now. But I appreciate that, Barbara. I don't think it's a miscarriage of justice at all. I just think that's the way it goes.
Jace is saying, great answer. The guy was making light of Marty, not funny.
Oh,
Oh,
well, okay.
ATF, great question here. George South never wrestled Rocky King. Do you think that's because one of them would have to win a match for the first time in their life?
No, I just think the matchmakers thought, no, we've got other guys for these guys to work with. And George South has won a couple matches,
Didn't I just see literally last week or 2 weeks ago he beat like Joey Janela or somebody on an indie show? I could have sworn he beat like a name guy. I gotta check that out on like an indie show, but this is like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, and George has been doing a great run in South Carolina. He's legendary in the Carolinas.
Oh,
And, and
it was last month. He beat Joey Janela for AML down in
oh,
North
okay,
Carolina. Yeah, I was gonna
right.
say, yeah, I know he's won a pretty big star in that league for whatever reason. I mean, obviously George South's a legend.
Yeah, George knows who. George knows what he's doing. That's for sure.
Who was the best jobber, Mike Boyette or the Milkman, Jake Millman?
By far, Mike Boyette. I rode with Mike Boyette my first couple months in the business, and what a character he was.
I love that Milkman gimmick though. What a scrub in
Yeah, but
AWA.
I think I think the hippie Mike Boyette would
Yeah.
be the guy. Yeah.
Off topic, Chris Candido told me he helped you train The Rock. Is that true?
This is true.
How come that's not more well known out there that Candido was a part of it?
Well, John, I don't know why people are ignorant out there. I can't help it if they don't know. I mean, how many people watch our podcast? That's the problem. If more people watch this podcast,
Then we
they
can get
know
the
that.
Candido stuff out there. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
Nick says the feud between Tom Prichard and Tony Anthony was quite interesting in Continental.
Well, it was interesting. It was a lot of fun.
Here's the great question I wanted to kind of save for last year
I can hardly wait.
before we talk about what Barbara wants to mention about your book here. Did you hear Hulk Hogan got engaged? Do you think he will make a sequel sex tape?
Well, he's stupid if he doesn't.
True.
Look what he got after making the first one. So, but they're no longer in business. So
Yeah, it's true.
anyway, you could get this book right there in
Barbara.
your hot sweaty palms. I'm sorry. Go to jpwrestlingacademy.com. Click on that link at the top where it says training, and on the front page it'll bring you to my book. You can order that. If you want an autographed copy, just email me at jpwrestlingacademy@gmail.com and ask for an autographed copy, and we'll get it out to you.
Craig says, I never missed your podcast. It's the same day as Garbage Day where I live. LOL.
Outstanding, Craig. That's a good way to remember it. Garbage and podcast. Nice. I like it.
If it wasn't for Dr. Tom, we have no Rock today. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we would. I think we'd be okay though, Barbara. But thank you anyway.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website tmptempire.com. You can follow Dr. Tom on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, did you know that Jim Cornette once said Hulk Hogan is a household name, but so is garbage, and it stinks when it gets old as well? Did you ever hear that line from Cornette?
Well, I have.
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, he's used it on a couple people. So.
Yeah, I disagree with him saying about Hogan, but it's still funny nonetheless.
Yeah, Jimmy's always got a good comment out of his hat for whatever it wants.
Hall of Fame for you. I'll get a book and an autograph. Yes. Oh, met you several times. Awesome. Yeah,
well, that's great. Cool.
Charles says thank you guys. Double cheese. For Jimmy Cornette. There was something in here. Oh, when was the last time you saw your brother's face? Because it was always buried in Vince's behind. That'll be the last. You saw him at the Draz's thing. He wasn't buried in Vince's behind.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. We had lunch at some
diner
right there. Yeah, but it was a small diner. It was a real like a cafe type thing. Very nice.
Anything else going on in your world?
You know what, man? We're just doing JPWA. We're training every night, and these guys are doing great, and we're graduating pretty close. We have a German cooking show coming over and going to shoot a segment with us in September during the graduation, and looking forward to that too. So some cool stuff on the horizon.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Take It to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. We'll see you next week, folks.